several questions that we've got in advance that we're working from, and then Chris and Sarah will transition probably about between 8:20 and 8:30 from the questions we've got in advance to some of the questions that are coming in to make sure we're responsive to a lot of the people who are online, to give them a chance to ask important questions. So, Kate, just so you know, we're taping now for Facebook Live, so we are live and in prime time.
And when we get started here in a couple of minutes, I think Chris will have everybody go around and just say a quick little introduction, like a one sentence, who you are, like I'm a parent of a high schooler, or I'm a homeschool parent, or I'm a teacher, or something like that, just so the audience has a little bit of an idea there. But we can obviously keep districts or like what school you attend or something like that. You feel free to keep that private.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And Chris, want to introduce yourself to the panel? I know you know Kate.
Yes, brother-in-law, actually. Yeah. That's the idea.
So I guess the only person we're waiting for at the moment is Terry. Have we heard anything from Terry? Or?
I just sent Terry an update link. You should be able to get in.
We'll get started in this in about a minute, but Terry has just joined. Want to make sure we have all of our panelists here. Terry, you are a co-host, which means you can turn on and off your video and your sound. So, Terry, have you had a chance to use Zoom before, or is this new to you?
I was on 4 Zoom calls today, so we're good.
You're a veteran, okay.
Yes.
So just so you know, you're all co-hosts, which means you can turn off and on your sound and your video. All the other participants who will be joining. They will not have the ability to turn off and on their sound or audio. That is obviously to try to ensure we don't have any disruptive influences, as we've seen in some, unfortunately had a chance to see in some of the public hearings, et cetera, using this platform. And they won't have the ability to, say, share their screen or anything like that. They will have the ability to ask questions via the chat function, or those folks who are watching on Facebook Live can ask questions via the comments section on Facebook Live. And that's where we'll go to draw questions. But it appears it's 8 o'clock, so we're going to get this. We're going to give folks a couple minutes just to continue to join. I know we have a number of folks in the waiting room. We want to make sure that we give a number of folks the opportunity to jump on this call. But I know that each of the 6 of you have sort of a different perspective. So just to Terry, make sure where we're coming from. We're going to do some quick intros. By about 8:05, we'll be ready to kick into some of the questions, and then between about 8, we have several questions already lined up. They've come in already, and we'll go through those till about 8:20 or 8:30, and then we'll start to transition to some of the questions that are coming in, whether it's online on Facebook Live or via the Zoom chat. So just to give you a heads up as to where we go. The two moderators will be Chris Maidment and Sarah Scott, and they'll be the ones who will sort of try to direct the flow. So it's now 8:02. Leanne, do you want to start bringing some of the folks in the waiting room into the meeting?
Absolutely, I'll start doing that now.
Fantastic. Leanne Kapanik is actually going to be working in the back end, producing for us, helping us out with a lot of that work. So I do appreciate that. know, we already have over 50 people in the meeting, which is fantastic. That's great. So we'll get started. I know other people will continue to join as we begin. My name is Greg Moore. I am the State Director with Americans for Prosperity here in New Hampshire. We're thrilled to have night 2 of our conversation about education in a remote learning environment. Last night, we had Commissioner Frank Edelblue and State Board of Education Chairman Drew Klein join us and give sort of a high-level policy perspective of how we can make this the most of this remote learning environment. Tonight is more about the individual parents and how we can give them some tools and tips to be as successful as possible in this new experience. We want to make sure that folks have the ability to make the most of this new and frankly very disruptive way of learning that's sort of taken over the course of the last few weeks in the state of New Hampshire, and to ensure that we get the best outcomes possible for the children across the state. Obviously, the COVID virus has changed a lot of the way we live our lives. And education is certainly first and foremost, not just for the students, but also for all the families that are working through this right now. And we're thrilled to be able to engage them and give them some tools, tips, and tricks along the way that they might use to be as successful as possible. And that's particularly true for a lot of the families for whom this is a completely different experience. We want to take a number of people from a whole host of different walks of life and give them the tools to be as successful as they can be. Tonight, our panel, we've got a fantastic panel. It's going to be moderated by a couple folks who are going to, I think, do a great job. First and foremost, we have Christopher Maidment. Christopher is the reigning AFP Activist of the Year, the 2019 Activist of the Year. He's also been very invested in education. He's one of the founders of the United States for Education Reform. He also has 2 children in Peterborough. Sarah Scott is our Deputy Director of Grassroots Organizing here in New Hampshire. And she is the one who's personally responsible for handling K-12 initiatives across the state, and to ensure that we're able to advance a number of those issues in order to improve the opportunities that children across the state have to have the best education possible. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris and to Sarah, and let me take it away. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Greg. We'll get started here I want to go around and have everybody introduce themselves briefly. And if you could touch on what a typical day is looking like for you now since the remote learning has taken place. And I'll just go in order by my screen over here. Anne?
Hi, I'm Ann Gilmet, and my daughter Hannah Gilmet started I've Got Your Back. I'm her outreach coordinator for New Hampshire. She's a 10th grader at Bedford High School, and our typical day, her dad and I are running our business. We have an essential business. We have to leave the house every day, and she's on her own at 16. And I'm very thankful for all of the executive functioning skills she has learned through the years, because since 5th grade, she has typically managed herself, and she not only is doing that, but it's like having a chief cook and bottle washer at home now as well, because she's not working at her after school job. I've been really pleased with our school district and the connections that they have given to our children. I couldn't say more about it because I'm so pleased. And with that, later on, I have a lot of input, I guess, as to the pros and cons of it from my daughter's opinion and many friends. So I'll move it right along.
Great, thank you. And how about Meg? You want to go next, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg Donahue. I live in Warner. I work at Bishop Brady High School. Pardon me. I'm the director of enrollment, and I am a mother of many. I'm a former homeschool mom. I have 2 kids left at home, both in high school, and they are pretty much independent learners. So I can't complain about the impact that this has had on me. They're actually working lots of hours because of siblings that are essential. So they've got a lot of, as you said, Anne, a lot of executive function skills, and they're doing okay. but it's definitely a learning curve for all of us being stuck at home and all of that isolation that goes along with it.
Great, thank you. Matthew, you might have a little bit of a different perspective. You're a teacher, is that right?
That's right. Thanks for having me. My name is Matthew Longo. I'm a teacher in Manchester, New Hampshire. I teach at a high school in Manchester, and so I'm on the front lines, trying to maintain as much of a normal classroom as possible, which has many challenges given the circumstances. But each day you're trying to tweak things and learn from the previous day. But for the most part, it's been fairly smooth transition. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of students who are pretty responsible and are checking in, which can't be said at every school, unfortunately. But our school schedule had to change, to accommodate just the reality of learning from home. So it's actually a slower paced schedule, which is kind of nice. We only have 4 classes a day as opposed to 8 on a typical day. So that's been an adjustment, but so far so good. And we're just waiting to see what the governor says this week.
Great, thank you. Christina, you're also an educator, is that right?
Yeah, hi, I'm a homeschool mom of 3, and I have one who attends a charter school in Manchester and receives special services. And I also teach homeschool enrichment classes to a couple of different co-ops that I help run. Our typical days definitely changed. Like Sarah said earlier, homeschoolers really don't stay at home a lot. A lot of our educating is done out in the field and out in the real world and really interacting. The biggest impact it's had on us is schedule. We have more of a structured schedule, mainly because my youngest does receive services. So we have to be very particular about who's on calls when. And social. We're just, our kids are missing their friends. Even with all the Zoom and online, it's that body to body, person to person things that they're missing. And we have not done a lot of online learning in our environment. So it's even for homeschoolers, this is new for us as well.
Yeah, and I know, Kate, no introduction I could give you would suffice, but why don't you go ahead next?
So I'm Kate Baker, the Executive Director of Children's Scholarship Fund, New Hampshire, and I've had a beautiful view of this transition to remote learning, having the opportunity to work with hundreds of kids at about 62 schools and more than 100 homeschoolers all over the state. And so I'm happy to field questions about what I've been seeing statewide. In my own house here, I've been working more than ever. And so that's been kind of interesting. My days have just gotten longer and my phone is ringing more and more. Some of our scholarship families are having challenges now where they are economically challenged and unable to pay tuition. And so we're raising money for that. And I've been busier than ever. I do have a high schooler here that transitioned to remote learning very quickly. The school that she attends was exemplary in how they transitioned. It actually blew my doors off how great the school transitioned to remote learning. And I actually also have a UNH student now who's doing the Paul School of Business upstairs at my house. So it's been an adventure, that's for sure.
All right, awesome. And Terry, how about you?
Hello, I'm Terry Wolf. I'm Community Engagement Coordinator. I work directly for a superintendent in a school district, and I totally agree with Kate. I'm busier than ever trying to figure out what this transition is going to be like between staff and families. I'll talk about it at some point, but we did a survey asking for feedback on remote learning after we'd done it for 2 weeks, and we had 1,400 responses. We were really, really pleased with the results, but it was a great insight into what's happening in people's lives. And then in my house, very similar to Kate, I have a freshman in high school who is holed up in the basement way, way too much doing online learning. And when he's done, he doesn't want to come out. I used to say that he would play on video games until the internet ran out, and he still would do that. And then I have a college freshman, out-of-state college freshman at home, also transitioned into remote learning. And her school is not, it's a struggle for them a little bit. So it's interesting.
Great, thank you. Well, let's launch right into the questions if nobody minds. I'll go to Christina first for this one. You touched on it a little bit, having homeschool students that, most of homeschooling isn't done at home. Can you expand on what else has been a struggle for you and what's been going well in the new environment?
I guess the largest struggle for us is that we really aren't out in the world learning things hands-on from people who actually do whatever the thing is that we're learning. If we want to learn about baking or business, we go to the business, we talk to those people, and we really learn the essence of what's going on. So really learning that firsthand knowledge is really missing. The things that have worked really well for us, it's going really well. I know we're getting caught up on a lot of things, but for us, education isn't about bookwork, and it's not about can you figure out a multiple choice question. It's more of educating the person to actually think and learn how to educate themselves. So we're having a lot more discussions and a lot more conversations about different things and delving into a little bit more than what we were in the past.
Very good, very good. On the flip side of that, Matthew, you're a professional educator. Can you touch on the struggles from your perspective in connecting with your students?
Well, yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for me has been missing the nonverbal clues that you pick up from students in the classroom. So much of my kind of assessment in the classroom is based on eye contact and looking at their body language, looking at whether they're fidgeting or whether they're focused. It's really almost impossible to make eye contact using Zoom, even though I'm using it right now. Because when you look at Zoom, like to make eye contact, you can't actually make real eye contact because of the way the camera's set up. So, this sounds kind of simple, but you actually miss out on a lot of valuable information by missing that. So it's been a kind of a little awkward just trying to maintain that kind of natural rapport with students. And then beyond that, there are the challenges of keeping students engaged and actually making sure they're engaged, because as you know, with Zoom, you don't have to turn the video on, which just opens up a Pandora's box of other possibilities for teenagers. So there's that challenge, but there's some things I try to do to make sure they're staying on task and whatnot. But so those are two things right there that I've experienced so far.
And in your experience, what's been going well? Can you touch on some of the positives that you've gotten?
Well, I think I've sort of made some adjustments to how I teach. Instead of doing kind of a traditional lecture, on Zoom, what I do is I'll pre-record a lecture and then have them watch it on their own. And that way they can take notes at their own pace. And then I use the live meetings for Q&A and discussion. So that seems to have been working out pretty well so far.
Cool. Kate and Terry, you both have high schoolers at home, you said, and you've both been working more than ever. So that must present some unique challenges. Terry, do you want to go first on that one? Some of the tougher challenges that you've had to face teaching your high schooler at home?
Really like the others, he's pretty independent. I'm very lucky in that regard. Some of his classes have transitioned actually pretty well. One of them, the humanities class that meets every day, that's good. After about 2 weeks of remote learning, they allowed using Google Meet, which they had not wanted to do because there were concerns about students having video. We have also found that high school students who can get creative and in trouble in real life also can get creative in trouble in the remote learning world. And so he's doing all right. Some classes end up really quick, and I haven't actually solved the issue of how do I keep him busy when I'm doing things, because reading a book isn't as exciting.
Kate, do you want to touch on that one too?
So I've actually found my teenager's grades have improved because she doesn't have anything else to do, which has been really interesting. She's been really engaged and enjoying remote learning. I mean, of course, missing her opportunity. She was looking forward to playing lacrosse, and she doesn't have the opportunity to do that, right? And looking forward to, when she was at school, she would visit the math lab. and get some tutoring from other students, she also doesn't have that opportunity as well. So she's totally independent. Her grades have improved. She's busy all the time doing work. She doesn't interact. It doesn't bother me having her here in the house at all or impede my work in any way. I just, we're all kind of, I mean, keeping me in the building's like caging a lion, so I'm sure for her, it feels the same way. We have enough energy to like fuel the city of Manchester.
I believe it. I believe it. And you also have a high school student. If you knew tomorrow that somebody was going to be put in your situation, what advice would you give them on day one that you've learned over the past couple of weeks?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
It's sorry to put you on the spot.
Because, well, fortunately, I have a very responsible child who is more like a warden than I am. However, I don't have to go to work until mid-morning, and many days she is done her schooling by the time I am going because their load is lighter for school. And we go through a list. So I would say the task list is great and benefits if they get through their task lists. And I think one of our panel group was talking about all of the things that they can learn to do at home. And my daughter has learned amazing things. She was a baker. She's now a cook. And she has made over 500 masks for the communities. So every day I give her a task, and she in one day will make masks for an entire facility, and she feels good about it. So we are setting goals on a daily basis versus a weekly basis or a monthly basis because of her platform and our foundation. We were doing that on a monthly basis as a group with the students, but now we're doing it daily. So I would say it's a little bit tedious, but it is for everybody. And by the way, my hats go off to every educator out there. You are my heroes. I hope I answered that question okay.
No, that was great. Thank you very much. Meg, I'd like to come to you if that's okay. You're a homeschool parent, and you did that by choice, I assume?
I did. Yep.
Maybe you could talk about some of the resources that you've utilized over your children's learning career that some other people, students or families that were in the traditional school setting might not know about, that they might be able to utilize that you've utilized.
That's a great point. When I was homeschooling, we did not have the internet, believe it or not. I've been doing it. I did it for a very long time, up until 10 years ago. So we used a lot of textbooks and things, a lot of mail. We'd order things through the mail and very old school kinds of ways. But I think we did a lot of experiential. So if the kids were interested in a particular thing, we would find a way to learn that skill. And now we have YouTube videos, lessons. If your kid is interested in something, all it takes is a spark, and you can just say, what do you want to, what excites you? What do you really want to learn about? If it's baking, if it's cooking, if it's caring for animals. We got chicks. So we did a throwback to the olden days when we were home all the time, because we are home all the time now. And what better time to start on a project like that than now when we're here? So we fostered a dog, we got some chicks, we started up that project, and they have to do some research and learn about all the things that they're interested in, and there's always something more to learn after that.
Mm-hmm. Has that been the experience of all of you, that you find your kids are coming up with new sparks, things that they're interested in learning? Yes. Whoever wants to take that one, go ahead. Something new that your kids wanted to learn? Anybody want to take that one?
My kid's just working out all the time in addition to the school. So again, the energy level is a thing for us.
I have a question kind of going off of this. I think a lot of people have been talking about the schoolwork, and so much of school is more than just schoolwork. It's the social interactions that you get as well. How have any of you been dealing with balancing the schoolwork with also time to play and socialize? And how do you get that that free time and socialization in still?
For us, I think, so I do have one daughter that's actually in school. She's attending a charter school. And for us, we find that our students, our kids, finish their work much more quickly than in a traditional school day. They're, they're more focused. They have less distractions. There's less movement in between classes, that kind of thing. So the time spent on actual schoolwork is really not as much. We're usually done by noon, 1 o'clock during the day. And our kids are learning everything from Latin and French to chemistry and biology. So, I mean, we're not lacking. So we do try to balance it, though. My youngest, who does attend that, spends an awful lot of time on the computer because the format is to deliver the information via the computer. And so we're finding that we actually have to limit her social time on the computer because she spends so much time doing the schoolwork. So we found that, if we can get the majority of this stuff done by noon, she can have a break and then spend some quality time with her friends a little bit later.
So I've noticed a particular fun between, I have two siblings here, and I've noticed that they've now taken to spending time together. And so they'll take the dog and they'll take the dog for a walk in the afternoon, or they'll go out and they'll do the hike. They're enjoying that. Terry, I know you're in Bedford. They're enjoying that Joppa Hill loop out there, right? And so they've been enjoying each other more socially, I think, than they ever have in their whole life. And that's been a beautiful experience for them, as sisters, to, while they don't have all their friends, they do have each other. And so that's been really nice for my two.
I think, Sarah, to your point, I think that's didn't place enough value in that social aspect. I mean, I know that especially my son is a social person. He's much more of an extrovert than anybody in our family is. But I think as this continues, is going to really miss the things like before school. He liked to arrive at school 25 minutes early, and he just hung out with his friends, hanging out at lunchtime, just seeing the friends, and he's meeting them online still, but he's only meeting the kids that he's close with. He has no opportunity to meet new friends, which I think is really important as you progress through a school year and, you interact in your classes. So I think that's going to get harder for us as we, as this is going to stretch out, I think many people think. And I think that's going to be one of the bigger challenges.
And going off of that too, I know especially those of you with kids who are seniors, there's been a lot of concern from parents amongst how are they going to get their credits to graduate? What does graduation look like? You have things like prom, sports. This is the last season for a lot of kids. So how are you dealing with some of these issues?
One thing our school district is doing that I work in that I really thought there were two things. For one, the principal of the high school does incredibly hokey videos that are very well liked by the community. One of them, I think, had 22,000 views within a week. So he's doing a lot of that to engage the community. Last week, he announced, the signs that you see out in the road that say, I have a senior. They're distributing them early, and they're encouraging people to put them out in their yards. And then today, I saw people started decorating their doors with, I have a senior, and they're putting up like sports memorabilia, awards that they won. And everybody is trying to rally around the seniors in a different way than maybe that we would have done before. And then we're talking about all sorts of ideas on what graduation could look like. We're trying to engage the kids in that decision. One of the proposals is sort of a drive graduation where they drive through, and that's pretty soundly been rejected. Yeah, it's not enough.
I mean, they should do that too, right?
Right.
So Matthew, you talked a little bit about how you changed up your curriculum a little bit to suit your students a little bit better. How are you finding the balance among your classes? Are more doing well? Are people doing better? Are people doing worse? What extra resources are you giving them?
It's a mixed bag. It's kind of interesting. Some students who are more, kind of reserved and quiet in the classroom are actually coming out of their shells a little bit more online. I'm not sure the reason for that. it's more comfortable, because they're not in the classroom setting. Then for others, the ones who are maybe not doing, struggling a little bit, who need the constant reminders, they're kind of struggling to kind of stay engaged and stay, checking in on a regular basis. So, and then, the people kind of in the middle, they're showing up and they're doing what's, being asked of them, and, they're engaged with everything. So, it kind of depends on each student, but, it's, I just kind of just make a slight defense here, but, I think everyone, teachers obviously, but also parents and even students have to be kind of patient, because, teachers, when on Friday afternoon saying goodbye to their classes on Monday morning, they're expected to, be online educators, which is like a huge transition. So I think everyone's really kind of working out the bumps in the road right now. But yes, just back to the original point, it's just kind of a matter of the personality of each student. But I think they're adjusting as well as you could expect. I've been a little surprised that more people are not as kind of social. Well, they're not as lively on Zoom as they were in the classroom. They're quieter, a little more subdued. So I think they're kind of missing out on that, the social interaction that comes naturally in the classroom. So.
And how do you balance the work that students have online on Zoom as well as the work that they have on their own? What does that balance look like?
Right. So for the way our school is setting up, we have 4 classes a day. Each one is set for 45 minutes. So I might do a Zoom session for maybe 25 minutes. And that seems to be the maximum amount of time I can have a real productive session with them. And then what I'll do is I'll give them an assignment to do on their own, in the remaining time, and then have them do some kind of follow-up, review questions or some kind of exit poll, that kind of thing, just to make sure they're doing the work. So it's so you have to tailor it to those parameters. So.
Another question that I've heard a lot about, and it's definitely something that I would also be concerned about as a parent. What do you say to any of the families who right now feel like they're concerned about their child falling behind? Mm-hmm. This is a really scary time for a lot of people, and there definitely is a concern of what happens if my child is not kept up and they fall behind next year. So that's open for any of you.
I've had quite a few of those conversations with the parents in our scholarship program. And, in particular, some families that have special education needs have concerns. And in those cases, I've shared with the families that, if your child has an IEP, those are customized. And so that can be, you can meet with your team anytime and update that information to be able to get everyone on the same page. I also spent some time explaining to families, like Matthew said, like, just give the school and give your district a little more time, right? Because it was a very quick transition. And I think some of those concerns bubbled up in the first week and maybe the second week, where some schools were utilizing paper and books to transition to remote learning. Some schools were already with tech. If a child had an iPad or a Chromebook, then they transitioned a little bit quicker. But some of those families for whom the school was using paper and books, right, those conversations with me were somewhat like, let's give the school the opportunity to provide you, right, and get everybody up to speed and give them a chance, right? Because, it's hard. Our world today is so fast and everybody's so accustomed to technology that I think we all kind of expected the flip of a switch. And it was amazing, actually, to see that did happen in so many places. But also, I think those discussions about, allowing the time for the transition was really important. And then 2, just giving families suggestions of things that they can do in addition to what they're getting from the school to be able to work with their child if they do have a concern or something that they feel like, if they're like, my child is struggling in spelling, well, that's something you can do that at home for fun, right? Let's have some spelling challenges. So it was really interesting to hear those conversations and to be able to, at least provide families with somebody who could say, it's going to be okay. you know, everything's going to be okay.
One of the pros, and I know there, to some people there are not a lot, but we're later in the year and our teachers, our educators, our homeschoolers know their students, and they have at least had a baseline from the beginning of school until now. And that's one of the things that I keep trying to remind my 10th grader about when she's had a little bit of frustration, is that you have all this baseline with your teacher. So when she has gone on these one-on-ones, which she had spontaneously this morning with two of her teachers at the same time, she was ready, but they knew her, and that was one of her comments, was how thankful that she was for them being able to reflect on other things that she had done already. So it gave her more confidence about the end of year result with them.
We have to also remember that everybody's going through this at the same time. You know, all kids, all schools, all teachers, we're all in the same boat around the world, globally. So if we all have to do a little more work at the beginning of the school year next year, we're all going to be happy to do that, because we're going to be so happy to be back in our buildings with all our people. It's going to be fine. We're all going to recover from this. We're remarkably resilient. Look, like you said, Kate, the flip of the switch, we transitioned out of school. We're going to transition back into school, and we'll be better off for it, because we will have learned so much more about ourselves and our families and what we love and what we don't love and what we miss about the school. It's a matter of perspective that we will have gained.
May I say one more thing? I have an only child, and I know people were talking about siblings, which was one thing that I really missed for my child at first. But they have gone on to having, last night, my daughter had a virtual charades game with a bunch of her friends. It was hilarious. I think their innovation skills are really coming around. When there's a will, there's a way type of thing. One of her friends lost their phone for a week, and I was brokenhearted because connection is key. And unfortunately, for those of us who don't love electronics like me, I think that we have to be a little more lenient with that.
We've got a lot of great questions coming in. And one of the questions that seems to be kind of recurring has to do with those students with special needs. And this is especially a really tough situation for them. Are any of you experiencing this, or have any advice for parents who are struggling to still accommodate them and work with the teachers and educators on this?
So our youngest is in special needs, and I can't speak highly enough of the teachers that are working with us with her. One of the things that we have found is that we talk daily to the teachers. We send them emails and things that are working, things that aren't working, and they work with us to adjust. So the first couple of weeks, she was on the computer 9 hours a day, and the workload that they sent her was decent for being at school. She had the help, she had the paras, she had what she needed. But at home, that was me all day and her trying to figure it out. So we worked with them a lot. And through that, communication was very key. She has, she meets with them 3 times a week. She's down to 5 or 6 hours of mandatory time on the computer a week from 9 hours a day. So our biggest thing was communication. We really had to let the teachers know what was working at home, what wasn't working, how she interacts with the computer, how the information they're sending us worked with her or didn't. And that took a lot of time for me too, because I had to sit down with her and really look at what they were doing. So unfortunately, it's really like time. You're just going to have to take a little chunk of time and sit down and see what's working and what's not, and communicate clearly, effectively, and often with the educators as to what you need and what's working.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point. It sounds like all of you are doing fairly well with the transition over to remote learning, or some of you already were homeschooling. For the parents that are at their breaking point, that are just stressed beyond belief because the transition and the added workload to them. What advice do you have to them, to those parents that are just at their breaking point and the students that are almost in tears?
I mean, first, stop trying to clean the house. Number one, don't try to keep your house clean while you have children that are little running all over the place, right? So my instructions are to start to lower your expectations of yourself, right? Because if you're at your wit's end, it's because you want yourself to do something, right? You're asking yourself to do something that maybe you can't achieve completely. And so just start to bring that down and realize that you have a house full of tiny humans. So my friend has adopted 5 children from foster care, and she has 2 of her own children. And some of those children that she's adopted are special needs children. And we had a conversation the other day where I just said, stop cleaning your house. Like, she was still trying to have a clean house and meet all of the children's needs, right? I mean, you're one human, and we are not superheroes, okay? Moms and dads are not superheroes. We're just regular people trying to get through the day. So if you have to sit and give yourself a break and let your house become a mess around you, I would say, call me on the phone if you need me to tell you to do that, right? Because we just have to lower our, we're trying to do too much then you're trying to do too much if you're at your breaking point. Right? And you got to let some things go. You got to leave the dishes, man. They don't matter. The dishes don't matter. The floor doesn't matter. The laundry doesn't matter. The little human matters, right? And so just stop what we're doing and maybe we read a book, right? Instead of worrying about anything else. So that would be my suggestion.
I was visited by a good friend who is a school therapist with 3 children, 2 high schoolers and 1 elementary school. And she was coming apart at the seams. So on our deck, we did the social distancing and had a chat for a long time. And I told her that as well, Kate. But I also told her to try to incorporate the older kids in her household to help her, because she's on Zoom all day with her patients, student patients, and is so overwhelmed. And I basically told her, to try to incorporate them, but to also let the teachers know, because a 3rd grader, it's not like they're in high school. It's not like their transcript is going to matter, and you have to pick your evils. And I said, communicate to the teacher that last writing assignment. If he can't do it, children are used to being at home, and that's their space where they're used to being, everything
messy, being messy.
Yes. And it's okay. They're used to, when mom and dad are home, having their full attention, and communicate that to the teacher. And you know what? If that assignment doesn't get done, we're in different times right now, and you have to just let the teacher know it didn't get done, and it's okay. We're all human, and it's okay for all of the people who are working from, home, to hear everybody, because this is reality, and it's something that everybody also has to accept. I tell people all day long, I work with people who are on the phone from home all day, trying to run my business. And I tell them, I love hearing your babies scream and cry. It's like being on a plane with a baby or kids who are, in a hard time, but it's all okay. And I think that's what we have to tell ourselves too, as parents, educators, that we're all normal. We, like Kate said, we're not superheroes. So we have to just not judge and accept each other.
I think one thing I'd kind of like to add there, I don't have kids, but I've worked with kids for a number of years. And at the end of this,
you want mine? I could drop them off.
At the end of this, they're not going to remember the technical glitches they had or the school projects that they didn't get to finish. They're really going to remember the experience as a whole and how they felt about it. So I think it's really important for parents to know that the kids are going to be okay, and just be there for them. Don't worry if they're falling a little bit behind right now. We'll be able to help them catch up once this is all over. So I would just really focus on being there for your kids and just knowing that it's going to be okay.
And I just want to add something. I think that we don't give kids enough credit for what they're capable of doing. I think that we as parents in this generation do way too much for our children. And I think that this is a great opportunity to let your kids make their own sandwiches, let your kids do their own laundry, let your kids really take care of their needs and themselves. And it's a great opportunity to teach them that. And they can do that as young as 3 years old. They can, pour their own juice or put their dish away or, pick up after themselves. So I don't think we give kids enough credit for being capable of looking after themselves. And when we start to allow them to do that, a little bit of that stress is relieved from us because we're not taking care of us and our spouses and our children and our work and their school and their responsibilities. So by giving them responsibility for themselves, it starts to take a little pressure off the parents as well.
And they don't have to do it perfectly the first time they try it either.
Yeah. Or the second.
They're going to make a mess and it's going to be messy and they're not going to be happy, but you can teach them, right? That's okay. That it's okay if the peanut butter's on the crust of the sandwich on the side and it's no big deal, but it tastes the same, right?
Exactly.
And I have a question that's probably more something for Terry. How are you dealing with families who are struggling with this, that are having difficulties, whether it's their students aren't able to learn online or they're not able to access something online because of a lack of a computer or internet, or just anybody who's having any kind of an issue? How are you dealing with those families?
Mostly it's done through each school. One of the things I was most impressed by is how we transitioned. We took all the laptop cards. We don't have a one-to-one program in our school district. We're working on it, but we don't have one. So they had laptop cards. They repurposed them and loaned them out to any student that didn't have technology at home. And they did it within a matter of days. It was amazing. They found out who didn't have internet access, and Xfinity waived their fees for they have a $9.99 feature, and so we helped connect them that way. We know we still have a few people that don't have it, and then also our real concern is the youngest learners, like kindergarten, first grade, who aren't going to be doing a lot of online learning. Plus, we do keep calling it remote learning, not online, because we hope there's a large offline component. So anybody that requests packets can get packets through their school. Most of that is done at the much lower levels, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And so they can fill those out and do assignments such as, reading a book or watching. A lot of the principals are actually reading a book, and then students can watch the video when they want to. And they can also watch it, 10 times if that's something that they want to do. And then the Commissioner of Education, Frank Edelblue, has also been really good. We participate in calls 2 or 3 times per week with him. And if families can't get the technology, he will directly call internet service providers and get technology for families. So there's pretty aggressive moves trying to support families in this transition.
And Matthew, I have a question for you. What resources have been available to you as a teacher to transition during this? I'm sure you've been able to talk to other educators. What's that experience like?
Right. So my district has been using Google Classroom, and so they've had a lot of online training with Google, with people from Google on a pretty regular basis since we went through remote learning. So that's been very helpful. So just been, being able to attend some of those conferences, or not conferences, but, the online sessions. So that's been really great. Also, I've just been, using certain blogs. There are a lot of, good teacher blogs out there with, just amazing list of resources. So I've been kind of picking their brains. So, and also, just people in my department, at my school, we have regular faculty meetings, both, as a school, but also as departments. So kind of have that regular teacher interaction is still very important, even though we're separate. So being able to kind of, pick their brains as well. So yes, there's a big combination of different resources.
And we have just a couple more questions here that I think we can get through. We're going to run a little bit over, but there are some really great questions coming in. But there's also a comment from the audience that I wanted to read off. So somebody said, as a parent of a high school student who receives many service-related therapies in and outside of school, it has been difficult to balance and can be difficult to shift gears. I've been looking forward to seeing the blessings and place gratitude for each lesson we have learned along this journey. I am making a photo book and video on what the remote learning experience has taught us and what we have grown to do independently. So I just thought that was a really great thing, and definitely something to think about. Again, I think that a lot of kids aren't going to remember all the issues. They're just going to remember the experience as a whole.
May I add something to that, Sarah?
Absolutely.
I saw a wonderful suggestion on my Facebook page the other day, and my daughter and I had a discussion about this because Hannah's grandfather was 16, her very age during the 1918 pandemic. And that was something that I learned a lot about growing up from him. And I explained to her that she's going to be a huge part of history. And she was very interested when I read her the suggestion to journal and to put as many things in that journal as she felt either necessary or that she wanted to contribute, because later on, all of these entries, pictures with, our ability to have cameras, but just all of the information that we're going to reflect back on is going to be so huge for people, going forward. So that was very, very interesting for her to read the entry from Facebook and then to think about that. So just a suggestion.
Great. I think this is probably the last question, but it's something that I've also wondered about. Do you have any advice for parents who are trying to balance screen time, especially with younger elementary school kids who are not going to be wanting to sit in front of the computer for 8 hours every day? So do you have any advice for them on balancing those difficulties?
I think our biggest thing is if the parent has the capabilities to try to structure the work into a project-based learning. If they have to read something and do reading comprehension, read Little Red Riding Hood and then learn about how to make a map because she has to walk a trail, and then go out into your neighborhood and make a map and build a basket out of, construction paper. A lot of the things that teachers want the kids to learn, the activity of the worksheets and the slides online help gauge how those kids are actually learning that information. But if you put it into a hands-on thing, you talk to the teacher and say, you know what, it's too much screen time. We're just going to learn about butterflies and we're going to go outside and we're going to journal it and we're going to read some information about butterflies and watch a show and we'll talk about it. If they have the capabilities of doing that, that is just one of the best ways to go about really decreasing computer time for that age group. Hands-on, project-based, and then just shoot the teacher an email and say, this is what we covered and this is how we did it, and take pictures along the way, and hopefully minimize that opportunity of being online.
So one of the recurring themes that I seem to be picking up tonight is the importance of communication, not only between the parents and the kids, but also the parents and the teachers and the kids and the teachers, and stressing that communication amongst all of the interested parties so that everybody is getting what they need and expressing their needs well and communicating that way. Would you all agree with that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That and I'm hearing more positive than negative all over the place. Just so everybody knows that in general, the response from people has been significantly, and I'm calling random samples. So I've been calling a family from every school that I have scholarship kids at all over the state, just to see what's happening, just to check on people, just to make sure everybody's okay. And the amount of positive feedback that I'm getting about schools and teachers and districts and New Hampshire in general has been astonishing. And so, yes, Chris, you got to talk about communication. And yes, Sarah, we give suggestions for when you're experiencing challenges, but also kind of a takeaway I hope to leave people with tonight is that it's really positive. I mean, we're getting national attention for our incredible work here transitioning to remote learning. And the families are telling me that too. So, you know, not just at a 50,000 foot view, but in the real world. And so I would almost just say, like, it's almost cool. You know? I mean,
I want to add something to that. One of the questions earlier was about the frustration and really being at the end of their, and it's normal. Homeschool parents go through it all the time. If you can make it through a day without hiding in your pantry, drinking your coffee from the pot with whipped cream on it and not crying your eyes out, it's a great day. So it's really normal to feel this frustration. It's normal to feel caged. It's normal to feel like you're not going to make it, because we all feel that way. We all feel like we're not doing our best. We all feel like there's more that can be done. So just know that you're not alone in feeling it, that we have all been there. We all are still there. And it's completely normal to feel that frustration and that level of just, it's not going to happen. I can't do it anymore. So those are the moments where you take a breath, you take a step back, you just say that I've had enough, and walk away. And like I said, everybody's been there, and it's completely normal. And that frustration level it's prevalent in the majority of homeschoolers' lives anyway. So welcome.
I think that's really a key takeaway too from all of this, is knowing that we're all in this together. There is a community of support around you. So if you are a parent who is really struggling, or if you're an educator who's struggling, please know that there are plenty of people to reach out to. I'm sure anybody on this panel would be happy to talk to you. But I think also too, so many of the schools are ready to hear your thoughts, whether it's a complaint or suggestion, something they're doing well. I think everybody really wants what's best for the kids, and any way we can make that happen is great. So just to kind of wrap up here, does anybody have any final thoughts?
I have one.
Sure.
For everybody out there, it is okay to simplify. I think this is a big wake-up call to our world. Every facet of our world, simplifying is good. It's good for our kids. It's good for us. It's good for our educators. And I think it's wonderful how all of on this panel and all the educators homeschooling and public educators, how everybody's just kind of coming together and resourcing each other. I'm proud of all of us.
Awesome. Well, if anybody else has anything, feel free to jump in now. Good.
Great. Well,
all
thank
right.
you all for joining us tonight.
Covered
that was
everything.
Awesome.
Just a few things as a follow-up. If you are looking for additional resources and ideas of things that you could be doing with your parents, with your kids at home, feel free to join a Facebook group that's run by a group called Yes Every Kid. The name of the group is Learn Everywhere. It's not actually connected to the Learn Everywhere program we have here in New Hampshire. But this is just a group that is for parents and educators across the country to share the helpful tips and hints that they have learned, whether it's video. I think somebody's been posting some videos on art classes. Other people have posted tips on scheduling and time management. So it's a great community of parents there, and I would definitely check that out. So it's on Facebook. The other thing is, if you are having issues, please reach out to the schools or to the Department of Education. The nhlearnsremotely.com, I believe, has lots of resources as well. So please feel free to reach out there. And I also have, Christina said that if anybody is looking for resources offline, or that they feel like they'd like to chat, please reach out. So if you have questions after this, feel free to email me. I'll put my email address in the chat here, and I can get you connected with the panelists here.
I also saw a New Hampshire-centric group. The Granite State Home Educators started a group specifically with volunteer homeschool moms willing to volunteer to help now remote learning parents that need a mentor. And that's on Facebook. And I think you can find it by going to the Granite State Home Educators Group. I thought that was such a cool idea, where homeschool parents are like, okay, remote learning parents, we want to help you. And that's on Facebook. And I thought that was a great, great idea, to be families willing to mentor each other.
Chris, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think this was a really great panel. You guys all had really great advice. I know I'll be using this advice in the coming years with my young kids. So thank you all for participating and answering questions. And I'm sure a lot of people got a lot out of this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you again to all of our panelists. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who logged in to watch. I hope some of this information was useful to you. Again, if you have any other questions for the panelists, please reach out to me. I posted my email address in the chat, and I'd love to hear from you guys. So with that, thank you again for joining tonight, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.